My name is Catherine Annis and I teach Scaravelli inspired yoga, which is a form of hatha yoga that tends to be a bit kind of slower, a bit more mindful, and a bit more experimental and exploratory than some other forms of yoga. And my background is dance, so I had a very strict ballet upbringing in ballet school, training every day. So my background is that, and I found that over the years my yoga has helped me to soften and really begin to feel myself, because as a dancer it's all about expressing and performing and giving out, and in my yoga practice it's completely the other thing. It's all about going inwards and sensing and feeling and becoming more sensitive to myself. And so I'm continually learning about how to do that in my own body, and hopefully learning to share that with other people who come to class. And I think that's what comes through in this form of yoga, is that it is a deeply personal kind of yoga. And so it's very individual, and that gives us as teachers chance to, and the opportunity to adapt everything and to have a bit more fun. So we might make less sort of angular shapes, and we might move a little bit more fluidly within the shapes and really explore how that makes us feel. And I think that's when yoga becomes inclusive. So I think when I started yoga, when I was mid-teens, I was already quite a long way through my dance training. So I never worried about flexibility. But I see a lot of people coming into class now and they say to me, I can't do yoga, I'm not going to be very good because I'm not very flexible. Or I'm not going to be very good because I'm quite old now, I'm sort of 55, I'm 60 or whatever, or I'm a bit stiff. So people coming to yoga for the first time can be quite alienated by all these pictures that we see of people doing amazing poses, hollow back bends, and really stretching themselves out. And yet, you know, when I think back to my first classes of yoga, it was all about the internal feeling, all about breath and mind and relationship with other people in the room and the community. Some of the classes that I went to back in the day were in a big church hall, and we all used to gather around after class and have a cup of tea and some biscuits and chat. So the class would be an hour and a half, but you would always have to sort of give yourself about 3 hours, because you would meet in the changing room before, do class, have a cup of tea, chat. So you'd never leave till at least like 45 minutes after class. And we can't do that in the big studios, it's not possible. But as teachers we can do a lot to make the atmosphere open and welcoming and really encourage people to feel it's okay. It doesn't matter if you can't touch your toes. That's not what yoga is about. Yoga is about improving your relationship with yourself, firstly, understanding yourself, and then hopefully allowing that to spread into your relationships with other people, improve your relationships with those who are closer to you, those who aren't so close to you, just generally improve your life. So whatever I can do as a teacher to welcome you in, to make you feel that this is fine for you, whether you're a bigger body or suffering from eating disorders and very thin, whether you feel you need to be stronger, or whatever you are, who you are, come to my class. Come to my class and lie down, breathe, be in the room, close your eyes if that's what you need to do, switch off from the outside world and just experience your own body, because this body that I'm in, this was my first relationship. It is our first relationship that we ever have. So if we can find our way into our joints, underneath our skin, and begin to kind of fill up into that sense of our body, and then that joy that I feel being in my body, that I love the feeling of stretching, I love the feeling of moving, I love the feeling of being strong, of being open, and I think other people are the same. I think they have a similar pleasure in experiencing their bodies positively. That can help you move out and say hello to the person on the mat next to you, and perhaps feel less self-conscious and just happier. So I run a teacher training course, and I have lost count of the amount of times that people call me up and they say, I'd really like to learn to become a teacher, but I don't know if I'm suitable because I am 60 or over 60. And I currently have 3 people on my training course, 3 out of 18, who are over 60. And I have to say, they are fantastic students. People who are older bring all of their experience with them. They know who they are, they know what they can do, they know what they like to do, what they don't like to do, and from that place of knowing, they have also struggled to get there, usually. So they've asked themselves a lot of difficult questions, and that puts them in a really good place to share that information with their students. And not only that, but I think older people in my classes generally seem to just get on with it. I'm amazed, I'm blown away by the amount of people who come in, and at the end of the class I'll get talking to them and they'll say, oh, I'm 82, you know. And you think, oh my God, you put me to shame. They work really hard, and it's so inspiring to see people who are older, sometimes quite a bit older, really working hard, but within their limits. And so if maybe they've got an arthritic knee, or they need to take care of their toe joints, or whatever it is, maybe they don't like doing certain things, or they've got sometimes heart conditions, so they can't go upside down. But we work together, and they're always really happy to just get on with it. And I think not so self-conscious as well, and I think that probably helps. So when older people come into my class, I'm like, yes, quietly, inwardly, obviously. That's great. So that's one area that I think we could do a lot to really embrace older people as they come into class. And the other sort of section of society that we're talking about a lot, especially at Tri Yoga where I work at the moment, is the larger bodied people. We've had a lot of conversations about what do we call this kind of yoga, do we separate it, do we offer extra classes for people, and in my class I get quite a few people who come who are larger bodies. I think because we don't do so many closed, really crossed positions, so they don't feel so squashed. Because if you've got large breasts as a woman, the last thing you want is to feel that you're sort of confined and squashed into them, because it just feels claustrophobic. So our poses tend to be more simple. And then if people have very short hamstrings, we tend to use a lot of props, and that can really help and improve people's experience of what they're doing in yoga positions. And if we have people in class who I know need props, then I usually start everybody off using props, So, for instance, if we're doing a seated dandasana, then I'll have everybody start off on a block. So we're all the same. And then a couple of people might decide that they want to take the block out. We'll sort of explore. Maybe we'll start with bent knees and gradually scrape our knees away towards the front of the room and see how that feels in the back of the legs and see what happens. So we're always exploring, and it's that exploratory kind of play, see how it feels, that can be really much more helpful than saying this is the full expression of the pose and this is what you're aiming for. Rather than going that way, start back, start simple and go towards something and see how it feels. See when your hamstrings stop you from moving any further forwards. See how your back feels, see how your chest is, whether your shoulders are still open, whether you can still breathe quietly, softly. And it's all those kinds of balancing acts, because it can be difficult to make sure that everybody is included, the real flexible people as well as the people who are not so flexible. So everybody feels like they're doing something that's interesting and good for them, perhaps, if that's what they want, but interesting certainly, and it's giving them some kind of sensation through the body that they're enjoying. So that's our challenge as teachers. And then the other element to this is I use consent cards. Because for a while now we've been hearing all these stories about abuse and inappropriate touch in yoga, and I discovered consent cards about, I suppose, 5 years ago, and I started to use them in my class, and I give them to everybody, so everybody has one, and I explain that this side up says, no thank you, I don't want to have an adjustment today. And people can not want physical touch for a number of different reasons. They can be working with an injury, so they can feel that they really don't want to be interfered with or moved in a way that they're not expecting. Most people wouldn't want that anyway, but especially if you're working with an injury, you might feel quite cautious about what you're doing, and you might come into a class with a new teacher and you don't know how they work, and maybe you're concerned that they'll push you into a pose that is going a little bit too far for that particular injury that day. So anyway, you give them to everybody with the no thank you, the negative side, up, and then you invite them, if they feel like it's okay today to have gentle hands-on assists, they could, if they like, turn them over. And I always give them negative side up, because I'm no trauma expert, but I've been told by people that know this kind of thing, that apparently if you are suffering trauma, it can be really difficult to say no. So that normalises the no side up, and if they want to turn them over and say, yes, actually it's okay today, I feel safe in this environment and I feel like exploring touch and human contact, then I can turn it over to be the positive side up. And I give them to everybody, so there's no singling out. There's no special treatment for anyone. We're all just the same. And I found that these have really helped my teaching, because when I started using them, I was probably still touching a bit too much, to be honest. I was probably trying to make people move into a certain shape that I felt was the right shape. And that's partly from a ballet background, where touch and adjustment is just part of the course. Everybody in ballet classes, you will sort of slap the underarm to bring up the elbow, or touch quite sharply sometimes the shoulder to make sure it's dropping, or whack a leg to lift it up. So that kind of touch thing in a ballet class is very normal, but in yoga it's a whole different thing. And this process of using the consent cards has really helped me to adjust my teaching, to think about each and every time that I invite touch to my students, whether it's just to put a hand on a shoulder, just a kind of a indicate to slow down, or to put a hand on the back of somebody to say, you know, well done, that was a great class today. I've realised that that human contact can be amazingly powerful. And somebody came up to me at the end of class a couple of years ago now, and he was absolutely thrilled that I'd given him this consent card, because he was a monk, and he said, he asked me to give him a consent card, which I did, because he said, I want to be able to let all the teachers know in all the classes that I'm a monk and I don't want to be touched. It disturbs me. So I thought, you never know why people do or don't want to be touched. So it's that has been really helpful for me. So language, the words we use, are really important in class. And I find that this is one of the areas where I'm constantly reassessing the words that I use and how I frame my sentences. And I'm up there teaching and I'm thinking to myself, is what I'm saying falling equally to everybody, as much as possible? Because obviously I grew up in a particular world, and so I have particular norms and particular conditioning that make me feel comfortable. And I was teaching a workshop, can't even remember where, but a while ago, 2 years ago, and somebody came up to me and she said, "You're setting us all up to fail." And I thought, ooh. And I was a bit kind of taken aback, because I'd been saying, let's try to do this, let's try to do that. She said, you think about it, the word try implies we're going to fail. She said, you know, you try for your driving test. You try do football tryouts, whatever. But it implies a failure. And I thought, okay, modify that, let's explore, let's check out how it feels. And I don't want to demonise the word try, but it did strike me that she had a really good point. And so much as I didn't like hearing it, I'm very grateful to that person for raising that issue, because it made me just think about, how am I expressing things, you know. Let's see if we can be, see, I almost said it then, let's see if we can be positive in the way that we frame things. So rather than saying, don't let your shoulders raise up, can you say, relax the shoulders, notice how the shoulders drop down your back? Or I'll quite often refer to the facial muscles, because I see people in class making faces and tightening their faces, and so if I see this going on, I'll say, just remember to soften the brow, and I'll kind of close my eyes and just stroke my hair, my head, or soften the jaw, and invite people to sink back into themselves more, so that the superficial body, and hopefully therefore the mind, becomes more relaxed. It takes a lot of effort thinking about the way to express ideas. So rather than saying don't do this or don't do that, how can I reframe it to say, please explore the way your feet feel on the floor. Can you feel how your leg reaches up into your body? Can you feel your back gently arcing backwards, or your belly drawing back towards your spine? Whatever the thing is that we're playing with at the time, to try to encourage people to feel the benefit and the positivity behind it, rather than asking them to avoid something. Because as soon as you say, don't do this, people are thinking just about that. Same with the word pain. I don't like to use the word pain, and I stopped using that word when I started teaching a back care course, because I realised that as soon as you say the word pain, your brain goes, ah! You just get kind of slightly frazzled. It sends your nervous system off into feeling and onto high alert. So rather than the word pain, I talk about sensitivity, sensation, and I see if I can use words about the sensation that we're feeling. So how does it feel when I do a forward bend? What kind of sensations do I feel through the back of my legs? Do I feel it in my hips? Do I feel it in my feet? Do I feel it coming up through the back of my body? Where do I feel sensation? Do I feel sensation from the contact of my skin on the floor, or the contact of my skin with myself? Can I feel the warmth of my hands? Can I feel the light on my face? So sometimes if we're lying in Shavasana, in some of the studios that I work in, they have beautiful open skylights, and you can lie there and you can let your eyes close, but on a sunny day you can feel the warmth of the sun pouring down through the skylights onto your face, and you can feel that kind of brightness and warmth. In the past, when I've been working with injuries, I had a bad hamstring injury for a couple of years, I would do a forward bend, and even before I came into the forward bend, I would be thinking to myself, don't go there, it's going to hurt. And so I was setting myself up for a difficult experience. So I've learned to reframe that and to start thinking about what I am actually feeling. So going into it from moment to moment to moment. So if I'm standing and I'm thinking about maybe coming forwards into a Trikonasana, say, and my old injured leg is towards the front, I will start thinking about my leg and maybe feeling the back of my leg, just inviting it to soften and sending love into my poor little leg. And also trying not to think about it as a poor little leg, trying to just give it some attention, but not so much so that it drags me out of the whole of the rest of my body. So that's what I'm trying to do when I'm teaching my students as well, is to spread attention around rather than letting it get fixated into one area. Right at the beginning of class, I might say to people, well, we are required for our insurance purposes to ask people if they've got anything going on, if they've got any injuries or issues. And so it's easy to slip into that, hi everybody, do you have any injuries or issues? And as soon as you do that, you're kind of giving people the message that this is something that is difficult. So one of my co-teachers on my training, she's come up with this beautiful way of saying it. Is there anything you're working with today that would make you modify poses? Would make you modify poses to do them in a slightly different way? Is there any help I can give you on any aspect of your practice today? And I think that's a really beautiful way of inviting people to tell you about what's going on for them. And then I would always say to them, raise a hand, and I'd go and talk to them personally and as privately as possible. Just so they don't feel they have to call out their issue across the rest of the class. So make sure as much as possible that when I'm talking to people about their private issues, that they have a quiet, personal, private space to talk to me about that, to share that with me if that's what they want to do. Because it may be fairly old school, I don't know, but I still do see this happening in classes. The teacher will be at the front of the room and they'll say, does anybody have any injuries or issues? And somebody will say, and the teacher will stay at the back of the room, at the front of the room, and that person has then got to call, I've had a mastectomy, across through all these people, and I just don't think that's a very fair thing to do. I don't think it doesn't feel very good to me. And even if it's not something so radical as a mastectomy, maybe I just don't want to share that I have a disc issue with everybody through the class. I would rather just keep it quiet. When I was a new teacher, I had a bad shoulder injury, and I was really ashamed. I felt I'd done something wrong, and it made me less of a teacher because I had this injury. And I questioned myself at that time, should I be teaching? Because I have I've caused myself this injury. And so this kind of shame, I really didn't want to share it. So I never used to mention it to people until we were doing something like a back bend, Urdhva Dhanurasana, and I wouldn't go up. Or if I was doing downward dog, I would do it against the wall and tuck my arm in, and the teacher would sort of come and say to me, what's going on, and then I would have this private moment where I'd say, actually, I have something going on with my shoulder and I don't want to be doing this. So I try and learn from that experience myself and give students, as much as possible, the opportunity to talk to me privately, away from the glare. And if they don't want to tell me, it's fine, it's their choice. Their choice. So if you're interested in doing some more research and sharing ideas and finding out more about inclusivity and maybe even seeking advice about it, there's a really good Facebook page, I think it's a group, run by Jess Glennie. I think it's called Yoga Mentoring, and all kinds of wonderful advice there. Jess is great at raising issues for discussion and then also giving really good practical advice. And actually she's written a book called The Yoga Teacher Mentor, which I've just been very lucky and read an advanced copy of it, and I think it's really good. It's got fantastic advice in there. So have a look at that. Okay, so if you'd like to find out a bit more about the kind of yoga that I teach, Scaravelli inspired yoga, I've written a chapter for this book, the Yoga Student Handbook, and it's a great book. It's got lots of information about yoga and Ayurveda and Qigong and breath and all kinds of other juicy materials, so check it out. And join us and get involved in the conversation and ask any questions, leave any feedback, tweet at Singing Dragon and follow Singing Dragon on Facebook as well, and hope to see you there.